There we go. We are recording now. So Mallory and Julia, if you guys would like to go ahead and get started, feel free to introduce yourself one more time since I was late starting the recording. Oh,
Okay.
and also for our participants, if you would like to ask a question, at the bottom of your, well, it's different depending on what kind of device you're using, but generally there's a button that says more or says chat. Sometimes if you're using a phone or an iPad, you have to swipe to get to those options. If you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat and we will answer those as we go through the presentation.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm going to go ahead and share our first slide. So good evening, I'm Julia. Mallory and I are happy that you've set time aside to be with us tonight. So tonight we've been intentional in our, yes.
Pardon me. You probably need to change which screen you are sharing on because what we are seeing is a small version of your slides and your speaker notes.
Let's try it again.
Perfect.
There we go. Okay, I'm good now?
Yep.
Okay. So yes, so
kind of
Mallory and I have put together a presentation that's interactive. We're going to reflect on what you're currently doing to support your child in their regulation and also offer you some practical strategies that you can start using right away. So additionally, we have some free online resources that we're going to be sure to go through, as well as introducing you to the steps introducing the zones of regulation in your home. So a few things before we get started. First of all, please get comfortable.
Oh, Julia, I hate to interrupt again.
Yes.
Am I the only one who has a big black block over half of your screen share? Is that just me?
I'm seeing that too. I was hoping it would go away with the second slide.
So was I, yep, and it looks like that's happening for the participants as well. Yeah, whatever that thing is that you just clicked on is blocking your view, our view.
Okay. Yeah, those are my notes.
Do you want me to do the screen share then?
Oh.
Oh, wait, whatever you did made it, that's a little bit better. Now there's only one black block.
Yeah, so let me stop and go at it one more time. Because I want to be able to access my notes. So right now you can see well?
There's a black rectangle on the bottom.
Yeah, that's my toolbar. Stacy, do you want?
I could do the screen share.
Okay.
Let me just get to the right spot. That way you can refer to your notes. The inconvenient thing is you will probably have to tell me when you're ready to advance the slide. Give me just a moment to go get them. So Julia, it doesn't look like there is a copy of your slide deck.
I have them pulled up.
Oh, wait. Mallory, do you want to try to do the screen share?
I'll just try. Yeah.
Technological difficulties. Oh, it looks like we've got one of our families that needs the Spanish interpretation.
Well, good.
Yeah. So Jennifer, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and explain how to access the interpretation?
Of course, thank you. Hola, buenas tardes para aquellos que se están uniendo a la junta. Mi nombre es Jennifer Sánchez y yo voy a estar proviendo la interpretación en español junto con mi compañera Rosy Barraza. Si alguien necesita interpretación, en la parte inferior de su pantalla hay un globo que dice, si están en una computadora o en una tableta, hay un globo que dice interpretation en inglés, que significa interpretación en español. Pueden seleccionar este icono que está en forma de un mundo o de un globo. Y les debería de salir la opción de inglés o español, que están aquí como English o Spanish, y ustedes van a apretar la opción de Spanish, que es español, y después les va a dar la opción de silenciar el audio original o de mantenerlo. Esa opción es personal y depende de cómo ustedes quieran, si lo quieren silenciar o si lo quieren mantener el audio original. Se va a escuchar pero más bajito, y la voz de la intérprete va a ser más dominante. Si necesitan ayuda accesando, pueden enviar un mensaje en la caja de charla, y así les vamos a poder proveer ayuda. Si están en un teléfono, estas opciones deberían de salir cuando aprieta los 3 puntos. Van a haber 3 puntitos y ahí debería de estar la opción de interpretación. Gracias. De nuevo, si necesitan ayuda, pueden poner un mensaje en la caja de charla.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add you, Jennifer.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, ladies, and yes, your slides are working great.
Okay. So please get comfortable. We will be doing an activity, so you'll need a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen if you want to grab those things. We are offering continuing education credits tonight. So at the end of our presentation, there'll be a survey with some slides for you to answer, and we'll be able to get you connected with the certificate. We are also using the chat feature. So the chat feature is an opportunity for you to comment or to share resources or information with our group tonight. So let's practice. If you could go to your chat feature and put your name in there so we can get to know you a little bit. Also put something that puts a smile on your face.
Kendra says her family. Hello from Rachel. Kelsey Jorgensen also said family. You guys are good at using the emojis in the chat. Amy. And Brown family says their son is a joker and puts a smile on their faces.
Well, thank you for adding, for contributing to that. We'll also be using the Q&A feature. So if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A feature. We'll be answering the questions as we go this evening. So don't hesitate. And then before we go on, Stacy, we're going to go ahead and do our first poll. Or is that you, Mallory?
I can share that.
Okay.
Yeah, I pulled it up, but Mallory can go ahead and do it.
Yeah. We'll launch our poll. We have about half of the answers rolling in. Just a few more, and then I will share. We're waiting on 2 more polls to come in. I'll give it about 20 more seconds. Okay, there'll be more polls if you missed this one, but just to share some overall answers, we got a lot of people are most regulated in the morning at 8 a.m. 73% shared that. As far as having knowledge about the zones of regulation, some people have some knowledge. Most of our participants are new to it, which is great, and we'll be going over introducing that. So you're in the right place. And then for our third question, in February, I would choose playing in the snow over visiting the coast. Most people said no. Sounds like most people would enjoy going to the coast. Okay.
So I know it's a challenge to find even 5 minutes for yourself at times, let alone setting aside an evening for our training tonight. If you need to step away for any reason, the presentation is being recorded and it is going to be available to you along with our slides tomorrow. Also, if you get disconnected, you can rejoin us through the Zoom link. Next slide. Our agenda tonight is starting out talking about self-regulation. Then we will complete a parent-child regulation chart. We'll then go into the steps to implementing the zones of regulation in your home. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll go through a variety of strategies that you can do in your home to support regulation in your child and review our online resources.
A couple of the goals we have for tonight is to help you all learn some strategies to support a calm and regulated state for when your child has a big emotion or a big reaction. We're also going to explore activities that you can apply immediately with your child, including the steps to initiating the zones of regulation in your home. The focus of our presentation is on early childhood. However, a lot of what we're teaching can be applied to older children. So if you have older children that you work with or that are in your home, a lot of these same concepts would apply to them as well. Some of the questions we hope to answer tonight, what is the difference between self-regulation and co-regulation, and why do they matter? What are the benefits of using the zones of regulation? How can I support regulation in my child? And how can I start using zones of regulation? So another icebreaker to put into the chat, name a favorite activity you do with your child. So try out that chat feature again and share something you love to do with your child or a child that you work with. Rachel said, do-it-yourself crafts, play with toy cars. Doing art with my preschoolers, gardening, that's awesome. Arts and crafts. Lots of running and jumping, especially into crash pads. That's awesome. Playing dominoes, art. Nice, thank you. Those are all examples of how you're working with your child and co-regulating.
So let's get into a definition of what self-regulation is. This resource and the following slides is taken from the website Age of Montessori. So regulation is the ability to identify and modulate emotions, control impulses, delay gratification, make thoughtful and conscious choices, and set goals and achieve them. There are 3 core types of self-regulation. If you can advance the slide. There's emotional, cognitive, and social. So emotional regulation is based mainly on the ability to calm down in the face of big emotions, such as anger or frustration. Cognitive self-regulation boils down to our ability to problem solve. And then social self-control, meaning our ability to filter what we say and not just say whatever pops into our mind. So self-regulation is important because it builds resilience. People with self-regulating skills cope better with life's stresses. Next slide. And studies show that children who are taught to self-regulate have higher academic success and better physical health. So self-regulation develops in infancy and at an early age. By 12 to 18 months, children are becoming aware of social demands and develop the ability to change their behavior when a parent asks. And by the age of 3, children can generalize self-regulation strategies used from previous experiences. So in other words, children will act in ways that reflect how they think you would want them to act in different situations. For some, controlling their emotions and body comes fairly naturally. And then for others, this is not the case. And however, at times, all of us need a little more time and support to regulate. So this slide is a list of characteristics that you might see in your child when they're struggling with self-regulation. They might be disengaged, staring off into space. They might be excessively wiggly, unable to sit or stand still. They might look just frustrated. They could be fidgety, throwing objects, crying, biting, refusing to participate. So I wanted to share this video, and it's a short video. It's 2 minutes long from the pathways.org website, and it explores the development of social emotional skills in children.
I need to share with audio, so just give me a second. Go. We're going to launch another poll about self-regulation, and you are to answer which one is false. Just waiting on a couple more polls to come in. I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, so which one is false? We got a 82% with that answer of parents never struggle with self-regulation. Self-regulation is a lifelong learning experience that we're all working through every day.
Thank you, Mallory.
Yeah.
So now I'd like for you to think about activities that you do routinely to support your self-regulation. But the time frame is, what do you do in the morning before 8 a.m. to support your self-regulation? So just kind of think about a couple things that you do to get yourself ready for the day. And what is it about these activities that help you feel organized and regulated? So for me, excuse me. I like to do a morning walk around the neighborhood, coffee to drink, and I like to spend time with my dog. So the characteristics of these activities is just the movement and the fresh air, the joy that I get from drinking coffee and spending time with my dog, make that morning routine really regulating for me. So I had you do that with the intent now of putting together a parent-child regulation chart. So if you can get out the paper and pencil or pen that I asked you to get earlier, we are going to fold the paper into thirds as though you're going to put it in a business size envelope, and then crease your folds. Are you guys able to see me?
Yes.
Okay, so I can't really see myself. And then when you open it up, you're going to have the long side at the top. And on the very far left side, in this section, write the word me. And then on the far right side, write the word child. And then in the middle, write the words things in common. And we're going to go through this. So on the far left, under the label me, write down a few things that support your regulation. Think about habits that you have or activities that you commonly do. Or you can think about your environment. What are some things that you find helpful in supporting your regulation throughout the day? For me, it is taking deep breaths, turning the TV off, not being too warm, having a window open, taking time to read. Now, going to the far right section of your paper under the label child, I'm going to ask you to pick a child in your life. This could be your child, a student, a relative, someone in your care if you're a daycare provider. So now that you have that child in mind, write down things that you see them doing to support their regulation. You can also write down things that they do or you do for them in some cases. So I'm going to give you some ideas. For myself, offering my child a snack, having movement and music breaks, allowing time for them to spend with their pets, offering hugs and just some downtime to snuggle, providing them a fort or private place to unwind and relax. So the next slide, Mallory, if you can go to the chart, actually, yes, thanks. In the middle, this is where we're going to put the things that you have in common. So looking at the right and the left sections, if you can see what similarities there might be. So for myself, walking the dog combined, spending time with our pets and being outside, dancing, the need for music and having the TV turned off and just having fun with my child. And reading a book together is something that I enjoy. It allows us to snuggle and to read. So for yourself, if you can think about some of those activities that are oftentimes most enjoyable for you and your child. So this chart is really designed just to help you think through some activities that can support you guys throughout the week. And if you place it like on the refrigerator, it can be a nice at-a-glance tool. And regulation strategies are going to change over time. You can redo it as often as you need. You can do the activity with your child to get from them their preferences. So our next slide is really just an opportunity for you to ask questions about the self-regulation information or the parent-child regulation chart before we go on to the next section.
You can put questions in the chat. I also just had a comment. I thought that doing that chart also just really points out what you're already doing. I think words like self-regulation and co-regulation sound like a big concept, but a lot of the time parents are already so in tune with their child and you're doing a lot of great things already. And so I like that physically writing that down on the chart helps kind of point out what you already have working. I'm not seeing any questions come into the chat. So I will go to the next slide. Oh, just got a chat. No questions. Tyler Brown noticed some of the same things as I did about the chart of recognizing what we're already doing.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And so our next slide, as we talk about self-regulation, we also want to offer opportunities to practice self-regulation. So we have a quick body break activity. I'm going to share a chair stretching visual and see if I can zoom because it's pretty small. And we will take just a couple minutes to do some stretches and movement and see how that helps our bodies. All right, we're going to shift gears to talking about the zones of regulation. I had started talking with my sound off and realized that that was not very helpful. So we're back. And so what exactly is the zones of regulation? The zones is a framework or a curriculum designed by an occupational therapist to help our children navigate their emotions and build problem-solving skills to cope with their emotions. So some of the key things that zones of regulation helps us do is build a language around identifying our emotional state. It can be really hard to talk about emotions in general, but for little kids, even harder. So the zones gives us a way to talk about it that can be more understandable for our young children. It also strengthens our problem-solving skills to regulate. So included in zones and how you teach zones is coping skills and how you can share those with young children and teach them how to actually participate in some of those coping skills that'll help them regulate. Zones of regulation is based on 4 target zones or colors, and those colors are red, yellow, green, and blue. We shared the zones of regulation website down at the bottom of this slide, and you all will get the slide deck in a Google resources folder, I think after this training, so you can go back and click through it. But the zones of regulation website has a lot of good information. It has some free resources, so we wanted to make sure that that was shared here. So what do the colors in the zones of regulation mean? So the zones is able to break up our emotions and categorize them into colors based on how heightened or not heightened our state of alertness is. So the red zone would be considered when someone is in an extremely heightened state of alertness. So these are our intense emotions, including mad, out of control, devastated, more of those intense emotions where you're kind of losing it. And then yellow is going to be when you're entering a heightened state of alertness. So when you might be heading toward the red zone, but you still have some control. And yellow zones emotions include nervousness, silliness, frustration, Sometimes being really excited will put you in the yellow zone, just a little bit more of a heightened state. And then our green zone is considered the optimal state of alertness. And this is where a child is ready to learn. These are the emotions of happy, calm, positive, focused, kind of right where you want to be if you're going to be in school and learning. And then our blue zone is what we consider a low level of alertness. So those are the emotions including sick, sleepy, bored, or sad. So this is when your child appears to be moving slowly. And that's how zones kind of breaks up the different emotions. And here's an example of how we can kind of categorize that into a visual chart. So this one is a pretty basic zones of regulation chart where we have the 4 colors and then some real pictures of children expressing the different emotions that fit into that category. And there's a lot of different ways to present zones of regulation, and it really depends on the user's preference and also what you think will work for the child that you have in mind. So I've seen zone presented as a thermometer, like the picture on the left. This is actually a chart that I made for my own classroom, and the idea here is that your blue zone is the bottom of your thermometer, and then the red zone is when your thermometer is getting so hot it's about to blow. So that would be why we could use a thermometer as an idea of how to present those zones colors. Another example that I've seen is the picture on the right. So it's the zones presented in a speedometer of where the blue is when you're moving really slowly, you're tired or sick. Green is that just right zone when you're focused and ready to learn. And then red is your body is moving too fast, you might be out of control. So I just wanted to share, there's lots of different ways to present zones, and the main concept is just using those 4 colors. Why use the zones of regulation? What we found, and even in early childhood, zones can be so helpful in helping your child understand emotions, so it gives them that visual and hands-on approach so that we can talk about these harder concepts of emotions and how to manage our emotion. It introduces those tools for your child so that they can start coping and practicing some skills. So when they have a big emotion, they have some things that they can do to deal with that. Also, many K through 12 programs use zones of regulation. So I think that you're never starting too early when you're talking about emotions and coping strategies. We're just going to have to provide more support for our younger kids than for our older kids. And that brings me to my last point here of why to use the zones of regulation. Young children really need co-regulation to support their self-regulation. And that's a fancy word that we're going to break apart just a little bit more in the next few slides, but mostly meaning more support so that they can work on their own regulation. So I'm going to launch our 3rd poll, and it is about what is co-regulation. So we'll see. I launched that poll, and we'll get a little bit of understanding of what you all think co-regulation might be. have about 15 more seconds. We have most of the polls coming in. You guys are getting faster at this. Okay. And you guys are right. Co-regulation is all of those things. It's noticing when your child's having an emotional reaction and going over there to support them. It's modeling your thoughts and feelings and self-regulation behaviors to teach your child how to do it themselves. It's creating those opportunities to teach your child about how to manage their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So co-regulation is all of those things, and I am sure that you guys are all already doing this. Zones of regulation just gives even more tools and guidance on how you can do more of this with your child. So a definition of co-regulation. Co-regulation is defined as a warm and responsive interactions that provide the support, coaching, and modeling children need to understand, express, and modulate their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So it's all of those things you do to help your child feel regulated. It's all of those things that you noted on your chart that you made with Julia that help your child calm down, feel better. All of those things is supporting your child's co-regulation. So how do we do the zones of regulation? How do we get started at home? And if you're a preschool or daycare provider, this also applies to what you would do in your setting as well. So before you get started, some of the prerequisites to zones of regulation, children need to be able to identify most of the basic emotions so that if you were to show them your zones chart and point to the different pictures, they would know what those were. So mad, happy, sad, excited, some of those, at least the more common emotions, we want children to be able to identify those first. Identify colors so that they can talk through the zones chart, and also to participate in calming routines. And again, we're talking about co-regulation for our young children, so we don't expect them to do calming routines on their own, but if you were to present something like a breathing activity, could they do it with you? And if your child has those skills, then they're probably ready to use zones of regulation. So I've broken it down into 3 steps of how you can get started with zones. Step 1 is teaching your child to match emotions to zones colors. Step 2 is teaching your child solutions to manage their emotions. And then step 3 would be using the zones of regulation as a guide to support your child, that co-regulation piece. So step 1, teach your child to match emotions to zones colors. And there's a lot of ways you can do this. The first step is really getting them to understand what zones is, and when you present these charts that they can connect what you mean by you're in the red zone, you're in the yellow zone. So the first thing you want to do is get some visual charts. There's lots of examples, and we shared some in your Google folder that you'll be getting that you can use. You can print them out, you can make your own, but starting to practice by playing matching games. So taking a picture of something mad and matching it to the mad on the zones chart. So we're connecting mad goes with red, green goes with happy, and working through that with your child. That's really the first step. And of course, modeling language all the time. So starting to use the zones language by saying, you are mad, you're in the red zone, or even labeling for yourself, wow, I'm super sleepy this morning, I'm still in the blue zone. So starting to use those zones colors as you talk about emotions with your child. And also a way to teach your child to match emotions to zones colors that I think is a fun way is playing a zones guessing game. And so I included a link to a video for how you might might do this at home, and you could do this with any movie or show that your child likes, or even a book, in working through guessing what zone the characters might be in. So I am going to put the zones chart in the chat box really quickly so that you guys can reference it as we do the movie or the video. So I threw that in the chat, and you can pull it up on your screen just so you have a zones chart to reference. And then I will go ahead and share the video, and we'll try out the guessing game together. Kendra, the link, I just pasted it into the chat. So if you try it one more time, but if you just double click that link, it should take you to the zones visual. Kendra, were you able to open it?
Mallory, it's because you shared it, I think, with just the panelists. So change your setting in the chat so that it's all panelists and attendees.
Thank you. I'm new to using the Zoom workshop. There we go. Sorry about that.
Writing's not that easy, but Grammarly can help. This sentence is grammatically correct.
So pull up your zones chart on your screen so that you can reference that, and we're going to guess which zone the character's in. So if you could throw in the chat which zone you think that character was displaying. Nice, I'm seeing yellow, happy, yellow, green, green. So this one was a little bit of a tricky one, I'd say. I think the emotion is happy, which would be green zone, but I would agree that she seems excited and starting to move a little faster, and so she might be yellow, and she might benefit from some calming. So I would agree with both green and yellow for that one. Let's try another one. You could throw in the chat which zone you're thinking for this one. I'm getting mostly blue, one red, yellow or red. Yeah, so sometimes we can interpret the zones a little bit differently, and that's okay. I think this one I would say is sad, which would be a blue zone emotion. But you guys are right that also maybe she's so sad that she's devastated that she's losing control, and then maybe she would be yellow or red. I think what's most important in working through this with your child is just picking that color and recognizing what's outside of the green zone and when we need some strategies, which would be anything other than green. We'll do one more. Okay, last one. What zone is that character? Red, 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 red. Yeah, so you guys are right. That would be our mad, out of control, red zone character. So I'm gonna exit out of our video here. And bring us back to our slides. Awesome. Thanks for participating in that. And I hope that shows you one example of a way to make talking about emotions fun. I think emotions can be a pretty serious topic sometimes, but for our young kids, we got to keep them engaged and interested. So there are some fun ways that you can practice the zones of regulation. And I hope that was one example of how you could start teaching your child about the zones and the colors. So step 2 of zones is teach your child about the tools they can use to manage their emotions. So there's a few different ways you can do this one. I like to use visuals of different calming activities. I think for our younger population, the more concrete we can make things, the better. So if I have a picture of my breathing exercise or a picture of other things that I find calming, that might help the child to understand what I'm asking of them. You can also act out emotions and coping using toys. So you would name the emotions and coping strategies that the toys are using. I like to use a puppet, and I'll act out a scenario. For example, the puppet's really mad because their favorite toy was taken away. And then I'll work with the child. What can we do to make them feel better and make them green again? So you can kind of role play some scenarios to practice emotions and coping in a way that's kind of fun and helps the child learn those strategies. And probably my favorite strategy in the step 2 category is making a zones toolkit, especially for our young population. Having that hands-on opportunity to practice coping strategies is super helpful. I think some of these concepts are really hard to talk about and even for us to explain. But if we can have a hands-on way for kids to practice these coping strategies, then we can do a lot to help them learn how to use these strategies. So the picture on this slide is a zones toolkit that I have in my classroom, and it's just a shoebox. And I put some different visuals in there that I like to use for calming. I have the breathing activity, smell the flower, blow out the candle, a squeeze ball. So that's one example of what a toolkit could look like. Here's another handout of things that you could put in a calming kit or a zones toolkit, a book, maybe a coloring page, a stuffed animal, that's something squishy that the child can hug. I like to put paper in mine. Some kids that are very upset or frustrated need a physical outlet. And so being able to rip up some paper might work well for them. Again, the picture cards, maybe a fidget squishy ball, lots of different examples. Really depends on the kid and what you have available. But putting those together in one place and teaching your child that this is their zones toolkit and being able to bring it to them and use it is really meaningful and helpful when you're using the zones of regulation. Here's another good example. They have Play-Doh, some bubble wrap can be really nice if kids just need something to kind of take their mind off of what's upsetting them, and having something to do with their hands might be helpful. So I'm hoping just to give you lots of examples to kind of jog your brains and thinking about what you might want to put in your own zones toolbox if you created one. And some of these examples and handouts, again, are in your Google Drive folder that you'll get with all your resources. And then step 3 is putting it all together. So using the zones of regulation as a guide to support your child. So that co-regulation piece. Once your child learns about the zones, can match which emotion goes to which zone, learns about the tools to manage those emotions, then they're really ready to start using zones with your support. And you're going to just use the zones materials as a guide to help your child. And you're going to want to do it on a consistent basis by setting up a zones check-in. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but that's basically just using your zones chart or your zones check-in to see how your child's doing. And you might do this once a day, a couple times a day, but on a consistent kind of routine basis. Asking your child what zone they're in, having them point to what picture they are on the zones chart, and then talking through that with them. If you get green, then that's awesome and great. If they say a different color, it just provides that opportunity to talk through it. And you can ask, you know, why do you think you're feeling yellow? What could we do to get back to the green? So having those check-ins helps your child to keep practicing this concept and helps you to be able to check in and keep working through those feelings for your child. So use it on a consistent basis, and then also when needed. So you do your zones check-in once a day, but then you also notice your child might need a zone strategy. So you might bring over your zones chart again at that time and help them when they need it, and bring out your zones toolkit and work through it with your child. So we'll share a little bit more about zones after this, but I wanted to pause and make some time for questions. So if you have a question, throw it in the chat and Julia or myself can answer it. Just give a little more time. We'll have time for more questions at the end as well. All right, well, we have put in our slide deck a 5-minute bathroom break. So if you think of questions on the break, feel free to throw them through. throughout the presentation. If I'm talking and you really want a question answered, feel free to put it in the chat, and Julia or I can get to it sometime during our presentation. Tyler asked one question, so I'll answer that, and then I'll set my time for 5 minutes for a bathroom break. So Tyler said, does guiding back into green zone include when they are in yellow for being excited? That's a really good question, and I think that zones is a tool to help guide you. And so I think that you know your child, and if they're excited, but it's an appropriate time to be excited, and it's okay, and it's not taking away from other things or distracting them from other things, then they're probably good to be excited. That's a positive emotion, and we're all going to move up and down that zones chart and have all of those emotions. The time that you might want to guide back to green is when it's creating a barrier for your child. So they're so excited that they just can't sit down and focus on the learning task that they were supposed to be doing. Or they're so excited that you can't talk to them because they're just bouncing all around. Then you might want to support them to get back to more of a green zone. I hope that answers your question, but the zones is a way to support them, but really just knowing your child and kind of what they need. Okay, I think we can take 5 minutes. I can't see the time, so if Julia, can you tell our participants when to be back?
Let's meet back at 7:48.
Okay.
Right around there.
Perfect. Okay, 7:48. So we are gonna pick back up, and I wanted to give some more examples about at-home zones check-ins, or at preschool, at daycare, wherever your setting is. And so this is how you're going to use zones on a consistent basis. So think about what kind of chart works for you. On the right-hand side, I have a zones chart based on ninjas because I had a student that was super into ninjas. So we went with that, and we wanted the child to be interested and engaged. So we made him a ninja zones chart. That works. Or on the bottom left, this child drew out their own emotions and colored it to match the zones, and just used a pipe cleaner and a bead to be able to move through the zones and check in with his family. Some more examples: a laminated piece of paper where you move the clip up and down. And then at Brookwood Elementary, a teacher came up with a Lego zones check-in, which I thought was a really fun way to practice a zones check-in and keep it interesting for kids. So I hope this gives you some inspiration and some ideas of how you might incorporate a zones of regulation check-in in your own setting. And then as we talk about this, I feel that it's important to talk about when to use zones and when not to use zones. So I have this handout here called Behavior Escalation Reminders to kind of remind us when your child is not going to be responsive to zones of regulation. And so we have that escalation cycle on the bottom of the handout, and it kind of shows your child is calm, something triggers them, they become agitated and become more and more agitated to where they're at that peak. They've flipped their lid, they're out of control. And at that point, what we know is that kids are not able to learn, or people in general, if they're at that high of an escalation, they're not able to learn in that moment. And so that's when you're going to just stop, breathe, and wait. Pause yourself, model some breathing to help your child calm, and wait for your child to kind of ride out that escalation cycle. So when your child is really out of control, you want to stay close and make sure they're safe. Model that breathing and help them and be calm. But teaching a new skill or working through a lot of verbal information is not going to be really helpful. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear as well, that zones isn't always going to be the tool you use. You're likely going to want to use it kind of around the time that you're seeing a trigger, or that yellow zone starting to get heightened but still have some control. That's when you can bring out your zones toolkit and work with your child. Or after, when they are in that recovery zone and they're calming back down and still need some support to get out of it, you can pull your zones in there, just probably not at the peak. So this handout's also in that resource folder that you're going to get. And another poll: what zone are you in now? Last poll of the night. Okay. I'm just looking at the time we have left, so I'm going to end this poll and share. Most of y'all are in the green, some in the yellow, and one in the blue. I feel in between a green and a blue. I have a 10-month-old daughter, so it's getting late at night for me. I'm starting to get that tired blue zone feeling. But thank you guys for sharing.
So for the last part of our presentation tonight, all the information that I'm sharing as far as strategies and some additional resources to help you and your child get to be green, it's included in the presentation. So I'm going to be sure to end on time at 8 o'clock and just honor that commitment that you've made by ending on time. So let's go. Oh, okay. So with this slide, just a friendly reminder, when your child is acting a certain way, remember that their behavior is communicating what their regulation abilities are at that time. So take a moment and just observe your child. What is it that they're doing? What is their general level of arousal? Is it high or low? Is their body calm? Are they like super active, or are they just laying around? Are they attentive or having trouble focusing? Are they organized in their approach, for example? Then after you observe them, consider what might they need to regulate. Do they need more activity to wake up, or a release of energy to calm down? A change of setting? Do they need to get outside for a little bit? Are there too many distractions or just too many choices for them? So when supporting a child to be green, remember all of the senses, the sense of taste, movement, body position, touch, sight, smell, hearing, and interoception. And interoception is that awareness of the inside of your body. You know, if you're anxious, if you're feeling hot or hungry. So I'm not going to read through all the examples of activities listed, but the principle to keep in mind is that the sensory experience of activities can help your child to regulate, or it can lead to dysregulated behavior. So it's really important to watch your child and how they're responding to activities. So this slide here is a link to an article that shares over 50 easy movement breaks that you can do at home. And I just want to touch base on a few. An example is having them push a heavy object around, such as a filled laundry basket, doing animal walks or yoga poses, hanging upside down with their head off the edge of the couch, spinning in a desk chair, creating an obstacle course in the home with the couch pillows, for example, or doing a dance break. And some of the best activities to do with your child are things that need to be done anyways. Having them help out in the kitchen, letting them play in a sink while you're in the kitchen doing meal prep, having them help with their own self-care, taking a bath, brushing their teeth, caring for a pet, helping with chores such as putting groceries away. And then playing, most importantly. Interesting that children should have at least 2.5 to 3 hours a day to be self-directed in their experiences and playtime. This is from the Age of Montessori website. So here are 3 resources that I'm sharing. They're free. The first one are posters that are kid-friendly that show animal walks, yoga poses, and different play positions. So yoga helps to build coordination, but also it helps to create the ability for the child to concentrate and show control over their body. It can be very relaxing, and it has the same effect on parents. It's a great activity to do with your child. The second link here is to the 50+ easy movement breaks. It's from a website called Your Kids Table. There are a lot of excellent resources for families on that website. And then the third one is an article titled Take a Breath, and it coaches parents on 5 deep breathing techniques that you can introduce to your child. Mallory, do you have the next slide? Okay. So there is a visual that I'm including in our resource file, and it's a visual that accompanies the breathing techniques. And so as Mallory mentioned, there's techniques such as smelling the flowers, where you take a deep breath in and blowing out a candle and you exhale long and slow. There's also the opportunity to learn about taking bunny breaths and a snake breath. So that article you might want to take a look at. And then our last slide here is just stop and reflect on something that we shared tonight that you plan to start doing right away. And we would love to see your answer in the chat.
Find more ways of doing common activities and make the chart for my kids to use. Using the chart, making a toolkit. Awesome. Practice breathing and dance. I love it, Ellen. Teach the kids zones of regulation, make a toolkit. Very nice. And I think today we really wanted to introduce these ideas to you and get you thinking about it. I think most of you are connected with someone from early childhood special education who is going to have even more information on all of these topics. So definitely encourage you to reach out to the people that you work with at the ESD to keep exploring these ideas. And we hope that we inspired you to think a little bit more about co-regulation. And the slide deck will be shared in your resource folder, and we listed even more resource links. We wanted to just give lots of examples. There's lots of ways to teach emotions and coping, so we just wanted to give lots of things to get you started with that. And then last chance for questions. I'll give a couple of minutes. We're at 8:01. So if anyone has a question that they want answered, feel free to put it in the chat. And if you think of one later, again, working with any of our team members in the Northwest Regional ESD, we'll be able to work more on this topic with you.
Thank you, Mallory and Julia, for your presentation tonight. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.
Perfect.